So hello, everybody, and I am going to do things a little bit different today. Normally, I present the names of God, the calendar, the Mazzaroth, and the Torah portions, and the living Hebrew letters. Today, I'm changing it up a little bit. I was even thinking about canceling today's date, but I clearly heard the Lord that I need to be about the Father's business. So for those of you who are unaware, my brother Jimmy passed physically on into heavenly places. And I am believing the words that Yahweh spoke to me, and I am believing that he will be resurrected here on earth. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and open in prayer. Abba, Father, I just thank you that you are such a loving God and that there is no one like you who loves us. And you show your power and your grace and your love to us in many, many ways. So I thank you today for all that you have done, all that you are doing, and all that you will do in the lives of my family, everyone who watches this. And I just thank you. I thank you because you are the one and only true living God, and besides you, there is no other. And I hand this meeting over to you. It's your meeting, and ask that you speak through me, and anything that is not of you, I ask that you not allow me to speak those words. And I ask all these things in your mighty Son's name, Yahushua, Yeshua HaMashiach. I praise you. I adore you, and holy is your name. So the first name of God that we're going to look at is Psalms 3, verse 3, chapter 3, verse 3. It says, "But in the depths of my heart, I truly know that you, Yahweh, have become my shield. You take me and surround me with yourself. Your glory covers me continually. You lift high my head." Now, keep in mind that in the time of David, when he wrote this, to lift up the head signified acquittal when judged, being freed from the prison of shame. So if you read that, it would say, your glory covers me continually, judging and freeing me from the prison of shame. It's kind of cool, right? All right. So in Hebrew, you lift high my head is ve'merim roshi. Ve'merim roshi. And the Hebrew living letters that we find here are Vav, Mem, Resh, Yud, Mem Sofit, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yud. The musical notes are E, A, E, A, C, B, E. The Paleo reads, he secures authority by his hand and water. His head strengthens and separates with his hand. Ve'merim roshi. Ve'merim roshi. He lifts our head up in acquittal when judged, being freed from the prison of shame. Ve'merim roshi. All right, the next name comes out of Isaiah 10:17. For the light of Israel will become a fire in the midst, and the Holy One will come aflame. He will consume the thorns and thistles of the Assyrian king in one day. The name that we're looking at here is the light of Israel. This was in regards to Moses kneeling before the burning bush, and God ignited a fire in his heart. Today, God wants to light a holy fire in every heart that follows his son, the Mashiach. So kneel before that burning bush, the light of Israel. It's Or Israel. Or Israel. It is Aleph, Vav, Resh, Yud, Shin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed. The musical notes are C, A, E, B, A, C, G. The Paleo says to us, the leader secured his authority and work, pressing his head, his strength, and teaches us. Or Israel, Or Israel, the light of Israel. Our third name comes in Psalm 17:7. Show thy marvelous loving kindness, O thou that savest by the right hand them that put their trust in thee from those that rise up against thee. The name here is savest by thy right hand, or saved by thy right hand. And it is in Hebrew, Yasha Yamin. Yasha Yamin. The Hebrew letters here are Yud, Shin, Ayin, Yud, Mem, Yud, Nun, Sofit. And the musical notes are E, B, D, E, A, E, B. His hand presses and watches. His hand, the mighty work is life. The Paleo is saying to us, his hand presses and watches. His hand's mighty work is life. Choose life. Choose life. Choose. Yasha Yamin. All right, so those are the three names. Let's go on to the calendar. The calendar says we are in the month of Tishrei. It is the month of Ephraim. There are 30 days in this month, and it always falls in September, October. It began September 6th in the evening. The seventh month of the Hebraic calendar. This is the seventh month of the Hebraic calendar and the first month of creation. So this is celebrated as the head of the year. Because remember, Yahweh told Moses back in March, April, and Nisan, he said, this will be the first month for you. Because they always used to celebrate it this time. So now we are in the first month, will be over in March, April, in Nisan. And this is the seventh month. So like I spoke last time, I refer you to Chabad.org. It's CHABAD.org for the details of the appointed times. These are very important times that we're in right now. You can also search the scriptures, and in Leviticus 23, we'll describe these appointed times. Appointed times are the feast days. These are the things that Yahweh has asked us to celebrate forever. He never said, stop celebrating my feast days and start celebrating other things. It was his feast days that we are to celebrate. So let's look tonight at sundown. So I wanted to get this video out before sundown so that you could hopefully listen to it and enjoy. So tonight starts Yom Kippur, and it is called the Day of Atonement. You can find that in Leviticus 23, verses 26 to 32. What do we do during this time? It is a time of fasting and prayer. There's no work. And in verse 31, it says that it is a statute forever throughout your generations. So the day before the fast begins, you say the Aaronic blessing over your children. It is the priestly blessing. You light candles, you recite the Psalms, you blow the shofar. The shofar tonight is one big old long blast, as long as you can hold it if you have a shofar or a trumpet. In the evening, after the end of Yom Kippur, which would be tomorrow night, would be a festive meal and joyous song and dance. So we are in the beginning of the planning. So we are to begin to plan. Sorry, this just wasn't coming out right. We are to begin to plan the construction of the sukkah, because that will be the next feast that we celebrate. And that will be in 5 days. So after this festival, start to think about, is God calling you? Is Yahweh calling you to build a sukkah? I have stayed outside under the stars before. I don't know what I'm going to be building this time, or if I'll be home around this time. So let's talk a little bit about Yom Kippur. In the first covenant on Yom Kippur, the high priest entered into the Holy of Holies. The scapegoat would be sent out of the camp to die for the sins of the people. You find that in Leviticus 16, 1 through 34, and Leviticus 23, verses 26 through 32. Today, of course, we don't send out a scapegoat, but we can ascend into the presence of Yahweh and enter the Holy of Holies. We all can do that. It's not just for the high priest. We can all do that now that Yeshua has been here. With the renewed covenant, the high priest, during the time that Yeshua walked the earth, the high priest said, one man should die for the people. It came out of the high priest's mouth. One man should die for the people. And of course, we know that Yeshua dies outside of the camp, outside of Jerusalem. That would be in John 11, 49 through 52. Hebrews 9, verses 1 through 14, and Hebrews 10, verses 1 through 14. And we know that that was something that he came to do for us. The prophetic or the spiritual significance is that Yeshua is our atonement and our high priest. You find that in Isaiah 53, verses 1 through 12, Zechariah 12, verse 10, and Hebrews chapter 9, verse 1 through chapter 10 and verse 25. Now, the Jews or Hebrews, I don't like to say Jews because Jews are only the people in the tribe of Judah. So the Hebrew, those who follow the way, tonight will be a special reading for Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. So in the morning you read a special Torah portion. It is Leviticus 16, 1 through 34, Numbers 29, verses 7 through 11. And in the Haftarah or the prophets, it's Isaiah 57, verse 14 through 58, verse 14. The renewed covenant is Romans 2, verses 21 through 28. And in the afternoon reading, which I'm reading tonight, will be Leviticus 18, verses 1 through 30. The Haftarah would be the book of Jonah, and Micah 7, chapter 7, verse 18 through 20. And in the renewed covenant, Hebrews 10, verses 1 through 14. Now, initially, I was just going to talk about those things, right? But the Lord impressed upon me that the next time I see you will be during the tabernacle or the Feast of Sukkot or the booths. And that starts on the 21st in the evening. So let's kind of do a little bit of that as well. So the first covenant, during the first covenant, when they were in the wilderness, they stayed in booths and they were commanded to rejoice. It's a harvest festival. That's in Leviticus 23, verses 33 to 44, and Deuteronomy 16, verses 13 through 17, and 2 Chronicles 7, verses 8 through 10. During the time that Yeshua walked on this earth, he went to Jerusalem yearly. At that time, they called it the feast. And I believe it's still called the feast. We find that in John 7, verse 2 through 53. An interesting thing about where he was in the Mount of Olives when he went to pray. That's because in his family lineage, they were assigned a specific place as all the families were coming back into Jerusalem. That many people could not stay in Jerusalem. So they were assigned, according to their lineage, different parts in and around Jerusalem. And his family was assigned to stay in the Mount of Olives. We are to eat and sleep in the booths, in our backyards or balconies, whatever you can do if Yahweh is calling you to do that. And they are temporary shelters that you put up. After Yeshua's return, Yah will dwell or tabernacle with man, and all nations will go to the new Jerusalem. And you'll find that in Zechariah 14, verses 16 through 19, and Revelations 21, verse 3. And then there's still another feast, another celebration, and that is on the 8th day, which is a very special day of rejoicing. I'll share more about that next week. All right, so in this calendar, this month is associated with Ephraim. Psalms 60 and 108 will be your references as far as reading those. Ephraim is referred as the helmet of his head, not like the head of Ephraim. This is referring to the helmet of his head. God is speaking these words. Keep in mind that King Saul was from the tribe of Ephraim, but he had fear of man. That's why he didn't do what God told him to do. He feared what people would think. So Yahweh rejected Saul and Ephraim. He rejected Saul and Ephraim. And then he chose Judah to be the lawgivers or the rulers. The people of Ephraim responded to Hezekiah's invitation, and they celebrated Passover in Jerusalem. In King Josiah's time, men from Ephraim contributed to the temple's restoration. So Ephraim has some good qualities and strong men who follow Yahweh, even though there are, some idolatrous things that were done. The alphabet letter, Hebrew letter that goes with this month is Lamed. So I'll speak briefly about Lamed. I've given a lot of information about it. So this is the month to be taught by him. Who? Him? Yahweh, Yeshua, Ruach HaKodesh, the Father. It is time to learn and teach with a heart that understands true knowledge. So really lean into him. The Lamed is the voice of the strong leader who listens this month. So listen this month for that voice. So let's talk about a few characteristics of this month. I've given you some these past couple months or past couple weeks. So this is the month of Yahweh's chosen firstborn son. Remember, I said last week that Yahweh chose Yaakov over Esau. Yaakov was the younger one. Joseph over Reuben. Reuben was the firstborn in the natural. But Joseph was the 11th son, the firstborn of Rachel through her womb. Ephraim, second child over Manasseh. And I talked about how Jacob was blessing and Joseph tried to correct last time, right? And he chose Yeshua over Adam. This is the month to be fruitful and multiply. That's what Ephraim means. Fruitful and multiply. This is the 7th month, and all 7s are dedicated to Yahweh. Some of you are the 7th child. Some of you are born in the 7th month. Take it to the Father. So this is the dearest month. Dedicate yourself to him this month. We have already gone through 2 feast cycles and are entering this cycle as we prepare to enter on another new year. In this feast, Yah has declared that this is the time to feast at the head of the year. It is a time to press in and to hear new revelation being released. Listen carefully for your divine purpose. In Matthew 9, it speaks of the woman who pressed through the crowd to touch Yeshua to get her healing. So press into him and touch him and be healed. He will release his virtue into you. This is the month to be awakened and aroused, to not limit him. Remember, this is the month of creation. He spoke, let there be light. So let there be light. The stone or color. Last time we spoke about the agate. This time we're going to speak about the color just a little bit. Black, it's not a bad color. I know a lot of people think black, ooh, darkness is bad. But remember that it is about the mysteries of Yahweh. The Hebrew word is be'ishon, be'ishon. And the root word is ishon, meaning pupil of the eye or apple of the eye. And the Paleo says the family of the leader is the handiwork of separation, adding life. So how could black be bad? All right, so that's all I'm going to say about the color black this time around. Let's talk about the Mazzaroth a little bit. I've shared a lot about the Mazzaroth. This month is Libra. It is the picture of scales. The deeds of man weighed and judgment released. Proverbs 16:11. A just balance and honest scales are the Lord's. All the weights of the bag are his concern. So 430 years after Yahweh made the covenant with Abraham, the law of Moses is given. in 1 Corinthians 10, it describes that the Israelites went, it was a foreshadowing. They went through into our inheritance of the Mashiach. The Israelites their experience was our instruction. They crossed the Red Sea. That's our baptism. They were eating manna and drinking from the rock. The rock. That's our communion. Who was the rock? Paul later speaks of the law of Moses becoming a kind of an oppression. Yah knows the beginning from the end. He knew that the Israelites would cry out to him. David was in the cave of justice. He cried out and Yahweh answered him. So this month, cry out to him regarding bondage or anything. It's a time to go outside of your comfort zone. Pray for the dead to be risen. Pray to see. Pray that blind eyes are open. Pray. Cry out for justice because he is a God of justice. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about today is the Torah portions. This week, I'm also going to give you next week's, but there's a double portion. I'll explain that in a moment. So this week, the Torah portion is ha'azinu. It's to give ear. Doesn't it make sense? Give ear to what God is saying, the revelation that's coming. All right, that's Deuteronomy 32, verses 1 through 52. The Haftarah, which is the prophets, it's 2 Samuel 22, verses 1 through 51. The renewed covenant is Romans 10, starting with verse 14, going through chapter 11 and verse 12. Now, next week, remember I said next week we begin Sukkot on the 21st. So I'm going to give you the Torah portions, if you are doing this, to read. So on the Feast of Tabernacles on day 1, this is your Torah portion, Leviticus 22, verse 6 through 23, let me say that again. Leviticus 22, verse 6 through chapter 23 and verse 44. Numbers 29, verses 12 through 16. The Haftarah will be Zechariah, chapter 14, verses 1 through 21, and the entire book of Ecclesiastics. Man, that almost didn't come out. The entire book of Ecclesiastics. The renewed covenant is Revelations 22, verses 1 through 4. Now, the tabernacle's intermittent Sabbath day will be Torah. The Torah portion will be Exodus 33, verse 12 through chapter 34 and verse 26. The Haftarah, or the prophets, will be Ezekiel 38, verse 18 through chapter 29 and verse 16. And the renewed covenant is 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 1 through 11. So, Abba Father, I just ask for a special blessing over anyone who watches this video, that they be blessed with your word, open eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts to receive what you have for them. May they hear your voice so very clearly. I ask this in your mighty Son's name, Yeshua. Amen and amen.